So the theme is minimal, and I'd like to speak about developing habit patterns and also losing habit patterns day to day, moment to moment, and over the course of a lifetime. I'd also like to talk about minimalism as a process rather than as a thing to get to. And finally, I'd like to talk about working in the moment with intention, finding a clear intention. I think that helps if you strip away everything else. As long as you have your intention, I think it's a very helpful thing to have with you. And let me. Yoga is called Sangha. It's a community, and every time I travel a fair amount, speak with new communities all the time. And this is, in terms of setting intention, this is a part of a chant that my teacher uses, and I use as well whenever I speak with new people. And the Sanskrit Saha Viryam Karavahai. It just means may our efforts have strength together. So I'm looking forward to talking to you afterwards. I'm looking forward to receiving your energy, and I hope you feel that you get something from this lecture. So that's my intention today. I am not a yoga instructor right now. I'm a speaker right now. And I think that sometimes when we give ourselves a lot of identifications, they can kind of cross paths with one another. I am a yoga teacher about 30 hours a week between clients and classes and workshops. And when I'm a yoga teacher, I'm just a yoga teacher. And now when I'm speaking, I'm just a speaker. And I do think, though, that the habit patterns I've developed in yoga have helped me this week in terms of just simple vocalization, speaking more slowly. I had a hard time slowing down the classes when I first started teaching, and so I worked on my vocal inflections. I worked on making points, and a lot of what I did as during sort of like my training, and what I still do is to minimize, like chop things, because in the grand scheme of things, I'm very rarely a yoga instructor. Like 30 hours a week out of 160, that's what, 20% of the time. And my students in the grand scheme of things are very rarely students. If I have a client and they come in one day or 2 days a week, or if I have my students, I get them, maybe like 75 minutes, 100, maybe 2 hours, or something like that. So I have 2 hours where I have them with me, and I can't throw the yoga book at them. I can't have them do everything. So what I've done over the years is come up with like smaller and smaller tidbits, and then just repeat and get to the heart of the practice to help them develop their own good habit patterns. So yeah, even though I'm not a yoga instructor, I do believe that my habit patterns are helping me right now in the present moment. Okay, so my first attempt at a drastic minimalism, as Kate said, was quitting my job. I think for some people, that's a very easy thing to do. For me, my history is being very risk averse. I don't like taking chances if I don't have to. And I was at a job that was really, it was fantastic. And I traveled a lot. And I used to live in DC, and I came back to Pittsburgh. They let me do that from my home. And then I started getting into the yoga practice and yoga teachings, and I wanted to do that more and more and more and more. So I was like, I can't work full time anymore. Fine, work whatever hours outside your, like inside your home, wherever you want, whenever you want. And that was really hard to quit. But what made me decide to quit? It's the I guess knowing how I would feel in 20 years if I didn't quit. Because I knew that. So it was like, I just basically did like a risk assessment of like how I would feel about things. And if I continue to wonder how I would feel, I know how I would feel when I was 39, 52, if I didn't quit that job. If I kind of just stayed with what I was doing, I would know how I feel. And if I did quit, I'd have no clue how things would turn out. And that was my big first, cutting the ties, severing, working with that. That's an example of, so form is emptiness. This is from the Heart Sutra. Knowing that all things are impermanent really kind of helped me reassess my relationship with my former job and with what I'm doing now. So, knowing that like my former job was impermanent, I myself am impermanent, you're impermanent, CreativeMornings is impermanent, Pittsburgh is impermanent. I mean, they're all, everything has an expiration date. So, given that you couldn't hold on to anything, I started to shed. And of course, quitting a job also means very little income. It meant a lot more time. So I was practicing about 5 hours a day, I would say, between meditation and the actual physical practice. And when I wasn't doing that, I'd bike down to the library and just read philosophy and anatomy and all that stuff. And so that was a really good time for me. It was good. I did that for about a year and a half. I was happy with it. And I got things down to bare bones. I didn't have a lot of money. I dumpster dived for bagels. I was on a bagel diet. So things, and I was happy at that point. And after a while though, I realized that like, although chopping was good and getting rid of things was good, it's not good all the time. And after about a year and a half, I was like, I kind of wanted to travel more again. I wanted to do things that I couldn't do at that point. And so I realized that like I can't just stick with this. And I think a lot of, if you read a lot about spirituality, this is the first step. And I think some mistake this as the ultimate goal, to be completely non-attached. And so fortunately the Heart Sutra doesn't agree. Things are impermanent, and there is a time to minimize and slash and get rid of and detach from. But at some point, you also have to dive back into things and recollect and reattach and work with things. So after about a year or 2 years of being very minimal, I was like, okay, I need to move from here. I need to do something with this freedom. Like you can't just be free and just have like a way open field, because then there's no direction. So I had to reattach. And I started developing clients. I took additional classes on my schedule. I was teaching probably like 7 classes a week to start. I became a business, did the LLC thing, all that, all that. It's just, it's stuff that like, tethers you a little bit. And things could always over-tether. But things could also be too free. So the notion of emptiness is form, meaning it basically means that even though things are impermanent, you still have to dive in. What I think this does is it helps clarify intention. So if emptiness is form, knowing that, but still knowing everything's impermanent, why are you doing what you're doing? And you start to enjoy the process of things more rather than the goal. And that was my second big sort of like wow moment for myself. It's like I can't just leave an open field with no tethers. My teacher differentiates between being unattached to things, which is not letting things lead you by the nose, and being detached to things. So there's unattachment. There's also detachment. And that's an extreme case of freedom, where it's like you're so not in the world that like you're not, there's no connection. So form is emptiness, but emptiness is also form. And I had to work on tacking back and forth between these two. And I think that's where being minimal goes. Because being minimal is hard. And the reason it's being hard is because you have to constantly evaluate and you have to act on it. You have to think about it. Because minimalism isn't a broad concept. What the minimum requirements are from one perspective, from one moment in time. So for me, doing what I did as soon as I quit, that worked for me. Now it doesn't work. Like another example, like when I was practicing this speech this week, my minimum requirements were just me in my living room staring at my computer. Right now, I need a different minimum requirement. I need this thing, all the people around me to help sign everybody in. If you needed to show up, thank you for showing up. So like what is minimum changes moment to moment, and it changes from perspective to perspective. So working with the habit patterns of both getting rid of things and then also collecting things, that was my next assignment. I think some people are more prone to purge, some people are more prone to get rid of things, and some people are more prone to collect things. And minimalism is a good middle path in between those two. And I know I'm more of a purger. I work on getting rid of things really, or not at all, I should say. And I have to work on collecting things and realizing things. I have to work on that emptiness as form. Given that I'm prone to some things that work sometimes, as soon as a habit pattern doesn't work for you, you have to shed it. At least for the time being. So I'm really good at getting rid of things, but when I had nothing left and I needed to start building, I couldn't rely on my old habits. So I need to really just put myself out and make myself uncomfortable and actually, get classes, entrench myself a little bit. And that's hard to do. That's basically the main point of meditation. This is from the Yoga Sutras, probably the most popular texts on yoga, just because yoga is in pain. So I think that's probably one reason. But the Sanskrit is pratipaksha bhavanam, which is cultivating the opposite. So when something's going on, when you have a habit pattern and it's not working for you, you should try to go opposite. In the literature, you're cultivating joy where there is sorrow. You're contemplating, or you're cultivating compassion where there's not compassion. You're cultivating joy where there's jealousy, and you're contemplating equanimity where there's anger. So basically, it's saying if something's not working for you, you have to turn it around. Just go back to the Heart Sutra a little bit. If emptiness is form isn't working for you, if you have too much stuff, you should probably get rid of it. And if you don't have enough things, it's okay to bring things back. So just tacking back and forth between those two, that's how I cultivate my own positive habit patterns, going back and forth between positive and negative, working with those polarities. So I'm talking about habit patterns. I use the word habit patterns instead of habit, because for me, habit is almost a phenotype, meaning like habit is what some people are doing, and the habit pattern is why they're doing it. Basically, in the brain, the more you do something, the more entrenched it will be, and so people's habit patterns become like a river. And of course, so there's rivers all over the place. And in the short term, at least, like we know where all of our rivers are going, right? And they're going to the Gulf of Mexico. Another way to look at that is if I take a pipette of water and put it in the Allegheny, that little bit of water has no choice but to go to the Gulf of Mexico. And that's the way some habit patterns are as well. And I was speaking with a neuroscientist yesterday to make sure this analogy worked on the technical level, and she came up with a great way to phrase this. To cultivate positive habit patterns, you basically just have to get to the source of the river and start digging. You have to dig a trench. You have to keep on digging, and eventually a little bit of that water starts going another way, and you have to dig that trench enough to make the current river run dry. And so that's the way you kind of sculpt your perspective about things and sculpt your habits. And the more you can sculpt your habits, the freer you are. Last month's Creative Mornings lecture was on freedom, so that Bill Peduto was talking about Pittsburgh, and the general sense of freedom was in the air, for sure. So this is a type of freedom, and when you are not involved with your habit patterns, you can be in the present moment, and your decision isn't made by your brain, it's not made by your impulses, meaning you have complete choice at any given moment in time, whether to shed, whether to collect, how to move through life. But then, and kind of paradoxically, with true freedom of mind, one has no choice. The mind that is free is decided from the beginning. If you feel a possibility of choosing, your mind is divided and disturbed, and that is not freedom. And so the notes on this is case 51, colon 51. The notes on this give a moral example about a politician who, if their intent is so clear and they're not following their habit patterns, when someone comes up to them for a bribe, it's not a choice whether to accept or to take that. Does that make sense? Like, if you know exactly what your intentions are and you're not being led around by your own, by your own nose. Is that the phrase? Am I using that right? I don't know. I should have checked that before I started speaking. Anyway, but as long as your habit patterns are in control and your intention is firm, you actually don't have a choice. And that's another form of minimalism. And so they give a moral example, and I'll also give an example in terms of specialization, because I know you all have your professions and your specializations. I'm not sure if everyone can read that. This I got from Brigham Young University. It's like a level 300 math class. There was a test online. I don't even know what math this is. I don't know if it's geometry. I don't know, trigonometry. I have no clue what this is. And that's kind of the point. All right, I have no clue what this is. And because I have no clue what this is, there's six potential answers. All those answers are possibilities. I have no clue, right? But if I actually did, because I studied music and marketing, if I studied math, I would look at that, figure it out. There's no choice. There's only one answer. The answer is D, by the way, because I cheated and I looked at the answers. I don't know why it's D. I just know that it is D. But for me, this is another example of like when you have a firm intention and you're not being led around by your habit patterns. Like there's no freedom at all. Like the answer will always be immediate, and the answer will always be simple. So with that sort of background, and this will be the last thing I talk about. When I decided to create something, I called it my sand mandala, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this practice in the Tibetan tradition, the Buddhist tradition. So if we can zoom up on that. So there's 4 monks working on their sand mandala. The colors are all different types of sand, and they will use either pipettes or some and like piece by piece, and that thing's beautiful. And they work on this for a long time. The intention is to work on it, and iconically, they would take this sand mandala that they've been working on so hard and go down to the river and let the river carry it away. So it's a study in non-attachment, and it's a study in intention, because their intention was never to keep this. Their intention was to do it and then to get rid of it, which is very project-based. You know, and I think a lot of people's disciplines in here are project-based. So, being that I wasn't naturally good with project, I wasn't naturally good with manifesting things, I worked on my own sand mandala, which was Beth Hansen, the musician. I think it was in 2012 he came out with Song Reader, which was it was an album, but it was all sheet music. So, and he did not make a recording. There's no definitive recordings of it. And he said in the book, in the Song Reader, it's like, I just want people to do something with it. Like, he doesn't care how it sounds like. He just wants people to experiment and mix it up and just do what they want to do. So I decided to take all 20 songs and just go to Club Cafe, which is a place on the South Side, a venue on the South Side, and I decided to arrange it for a 10-piece band, horn lines, singers, piano, guitars, and I played percussion myself. So I just wanted to make this my sand mandala. So to make it my sand mandala, I needed to have a strong intention. So, and it was twofold. Number one, I wasn't going to get paid, because fortunately, the Pittsburgh yoga community has been very kind to me, and I'm able to live off of what I'm able to live off of. So I didn't need the money, and I didn't even want the money. I wasn't doing it for the money. Why was I doing it? The second intention, the positive intention, was I just wanted to create as much good vibes, for lack of a better word, as much good vibes along every aspect of this process as I could. So I spent a Christmas reprieve working on the music, and asked musicians that I'd known some for years, and the majority of them I'd never met before, and I just wanted to trust them, which was, for me, that was good vibes, like just trusting people. And I met with them individually, and then we just had 2 practices for 20 songs, and then we hit the stage. And it was great. I think it was unique enough, probably because it was back that I did a radio interview, and I worked with Tumblr for the first time. I never did a Tumblr account before, but I just worked with Tumblr, just experimented with that. I let the musicians kind of do whatever they wanted to do. I was guiding a little bit, but everyone was able to do what they wanted to do. It was a good crowd, and by all means, it was successful. And how I know it was successful, and I even just heard this, someone just told me afterwards, but 2 people that were there, one woman said to another during the intermission, they look like they're having so much fun. And for me, that really, it really proved that this technique works. If your intention is solid from the beginning, it shows.